seated. It's story time today. Today, if you read your e-epistle, you know what the title of this sermon is going to be. It's called The Fourth Wise Man. This is a story that was originally written by the poet, author of some of the hymns we sing, Henry Van Dyke, who was writing in the mid to late 1800s. He wrote a book called The Other Wise Man. And then later, much later, there was a movie made of that story, or based on that story, called The Fourth Wise Man. And so today, you're going to hear a compilation of the book and the movie, and this title of the sermon is The Fourth Wise Man. So, what you need to understand that this story that I'm telling you is totally fiction. But interwoven into this fiction are little bits of scripture. Little bit of the original story of the wise men and of Jesus. And he interwove that in such a way that he made a story out of it. It's not exactly accurate in the sense that the events that happen in this story are not quite in the exact same order as the events that happen in the gospel. But he takes those little bits and he weaves it in together. And so that's the story you're going to hear today. Now we know the story of the three magi or wise men. Well, we need to realize that magi and wise men, there was a lot more than three of them. They were a very common group of people in the Middle East in that time. And they lived in many of the cities. And they had great power, many of them. They were they were called magicians. They were called what we would think today as scientists. They were called what we think today as astrologers. We would call them today alchemists. We would call them today wise men because they also had wisdom. And there were groups of these wise men in all of the major cities in the Near East. The story of the fourth wise man is a story about a wise man who lived with other wise men in a Persian city. Now, this young and upcoming wise man was a very good astronomer, astrologer, and he was a very good, what we would call physician or doctor today. His father was the head of this group of magi in this Persian city, and he was on track to take his father's place. So, very skilled. Unfortunately, however, as a young man, who he still was a young man, his wife and two children were destroyed in a fire. And so, of course, he was quite bereaved about that. And he throws himself into his work. And he digs out and does more astronomy, and he watches the heavens very much. And he is looking for, because there was this belief that there was a great king coming. A great king that was going to bring all of the world together into one kingdom of peace. A great king who was going to raise the dead. And so he was looking for this particular star in the sky every night. Well, one night that star appears. Well, the word travels quickly among the fellow groups of magi and through that part of the world. And three of them, who got names in the Middle Ages, Balthasar, Caspar, and Melchior, decided to go follow the star to find this Prince of Peace. But they didn't live in the same town as our fourth wise man did. So he's extremely excited. He tries to convince some of his other compatriots, some of his fellow wise people to go with him. And he's the young man, and they make fun of him and have nothing to do with that. It even gets worse when he starts selling everything he owns, all his precious items. He starts selling everything, everything, everything. They even make more fun of him. Now, why are you selling all this stuff? Because I'm going to follow that star. So he learns that these three wise men that we know of, that we sing of, were going to be leaving soon, but they were in a different city. So he sells everything. He buys three things. He buys two very precious gems and one great pearl, which we could call the pearl of great price, which also has a little bit of a story in the Bible, if you remember. And he buys these three things. They're very small. They're very portable. He can carry them with him very easily. And finally, he takes off to meet the three wise men. He takes a person with him to help him and stuff, a servant, slave, whatever. And they travel for several days by horseback, rushing as fast as they could. They get to the rendezvous point, but they have missed the three wise men. Well, he is determined that he is going to go. So he takes out one of his gems and he gives it to the servant. Go sell this in the market and buy the camels and all the things that we need for a caravan to go to Jerusalem, because they expected this king of the Jews to be born in Jerusalem. And so the servant goes and sells the gem and buys a camel, outfits the caravan, and off they go. Well, obviously this is a book, so you're not going to get all the details. But he has many trials and tribulations along the way. But at one time along this way, following the star, he meets a Jewish elder, perhaps a rabbi. And he's talking to this Jewish rabbi about this anticipation of this king of the Jews who is coming, that he's going to go find. He's going to go find him in Jerusalem. And this elder Jewish person says, oh, no, he's not going to be born in Jerusalem. And he says, it says in Isaiah, he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So, all right, so now our fourth man has a different destination. So he heads for Bethlehem. But along the way, he runs into people that need help. And so he stops and he gives the help that he's able to get. Perhaps it's medicine that he can provide. Perhaps it's some healing hands that he provides. Perhaps it's some of the extra stuff they had in the caravan he didn't think he needed, some food or some water. And so he stops and helps people along the way. But this delays his travel. But the travel continues. And after much arduous travels and adventures, he finally arrives in Bethlehem. Unfortunately, he has just missed the Messiah. Even more unfortunately, he has arrived in Bethlehem at the same time that Herod's armies are killing all the baby boys that are under 2 years old. Well, he arrives into this mayhem and the raid that is going on, and women and children and people running around trying to escape the army and stuff. And he finds one woman and baby. He attempts to shelter and hide in a room. And the captain comes and hears the baby cry all of a sudden. So he knows there's a baby there. But our fourth man steps in front and says, you know, here's a very precious jewel. There's nobody here. So the captain takes the jewel as a bribe and goes away. And the baby and the mother are saved. Well, in his pouch, that only leaves now the pearl of great price. And so, inquiring in Bethlehem, he learns that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus are now on their way to Egypt. And so now he has another destination. And so they start off, he and the servant. They're down not much now. Most of the stuff he's given away along the way. It's just them and maybe a donkey or a horse and, a saddlebag and stuff. And they don't get very far out of Bethlehem, and they are attacked by a band of bandits. And the bandits are going to take all his stuff. They actually take him and his servant into their hideout, so to speak, where he discovers that these bandits are really lepers and other outcasts from society. Well, he sees these people and he takes great pity on them. He's a doctor. He sees these people that need to be healed. Even though leprosy has no cure, there are ways to relieve the suffering that he knows. And so he uses his medical skills and, he works with these people. And this delays his journey several weeks, maybe even a couple of months as he tries to take care of these people. So everything that he had in his saddlebag ends up going anyway to these people. Whether they had robbed him or not, doesn't matter. It's all gone because he gave it away. He even's down to just the clothes on his back, and he starts tearing them up in order to make bandages for the people. Well, he's been living there a couple of months, and he's really taking pity on these people. And suddenly he has an idea, an inspiration. He says, you can stop being bandits and thieves if we build some kind of self-sufficient community here. You can farm, and you can do other things to feed yourself so you don't have to be bandits. And they say, well, we don't know how to do that. He says, well, I'll teach you. So he sets off teaching them how to farm, how to clear the land. He builds an irrigation system to bring water into these fields and everything. And this takes weeks, months, a season, a 2 seasons to get, crops planted and seeds for the next year and food and all that kind of stuff. It takes time. But our fourth wise man is becoming very, very happy again. Even though he's missed the Messiah so many times, he's becoming happy. He actually becomes kind of like one of the outlaws. He doesn't have much clothes left anymore. He's in rags like everybody else. They've become a self-sufficient community, but time passes quickly. Almost 30 years pass. But unfortunately, this enterprise of these people trying to feed themselves and be self-sufficient kind of upsets the village folks, because these people used to steal money, come to the village folks and buy their food. They're not doing that anymore. And so the village folks kind of get upset about this. They don't like these lepers and outsiders anyway. So one night they come and they burn down all the crops that are standing. They destroy all the granaries where crops are saved. They destroy and burn the irrigation system. So everything is destroyed. Well, number 4 is really depressed about this. He's aging now. He's been there, 30 years. He wasn't a young man when he started. He was a young man, but that still makes him an old man now. And he's giving up hope. He's giving up life. And not long after this tragedy happens, one of his fellow magi from his particular group in Persia, is coming by and stops to see him. He says, I thought I heard about you. I thought this might be you here. And he wants to sit down and talk with him and everything. And, he says, you gave up so much to do this search for this great king that was going to unite the world in peace and going to raise the dead from life. Did you find him? Well, of course the answer is no. And so this Magi also breaks the news to number 4 that his father, after the years that he had been gone, became very depressed because his son had left and not returned, and died a broken man after several years of depression. Well, this is kind of the last straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. Our poor Magi declares now he knows he is dying. And now there's no chance for him to find this King of Peace. He pulls out his final gift, the pearl of great price, and gives it to the colony leader to sell in order to have money for food and to rebuild their enterprise. And then he goes into a very, very deep depression, which lasts for a while. And during this time, 2 of his colony members, including a blind man that the Magi has been trying to heal for 30 years, go into Jerusalem on a shopping trip or whatever, I don't know. They went into Jerusalem, and they happened to go into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, just missing Jesus. But they now know where he's at. This Messiah that their friend has been looking for all these years. And this blind man hears that Jesus heals the blind and does all these things. And so he goes and he finds Jesus and he gets his eyes opened by Jesus. And so the blind man and his traveling companion rush back to the colony. And they tell the colony, they tell our number 4 wise men that they found the Messiah. And it has to be him because he has to be from God, because nobody could be healing and curing the blind and doing all the things that he does if he wasn't from God. And they urge him to go to Jerusalem as fast as they can. But our poor Magi is very weakened, very depressed, in a very poor state. He says, I can't go. He says, I can't go to this King of Kings and let him see me in these rags. I can't go because I have nothing to give him. Well, the leader of the colony at this time comes up and says, she could not bring herself to sell the pearl of great price, and gives it back to him. So now he has a gift for the Messiah. And so happily, but still fairly sick and weak, he goes to Jerusalem to search for Jesus. Well, the story unfolds. You can guess what happens next. He misses him just after the Last Supper. He finds the upper room because he knows that's where he's supposed to be. He goes there and he finds a woman kind of cleaning up and says, you missed him, and she's very suspicious of him, wanting to know why he wants to find Jesus. And so she's kind of reluctant to really engage him in conversation, but finally she's convinced that he's sincere, and he keeps asking, where can I find him? Where can I find him? And she finally says, go to Gethsemane. And he goes to Gethsemane. But the soldiers have already been there and have arrested Jesus. And so he misses Jesus once more. Well, there's some other events that take place where Van Dyke kind of weaves in the denial of Peter and the betrayal of Judas and some other little factors from the gospel story. And so a little bit of time is spent, a day or two, and finally our 4th wise man witnesses the crucifixion of Jesus from a distance. He knows that his Messiah is being crucified. Even though he's from a distance, he knows what's going on. He experiences the earthquake. He experiences the solar eclipse. He is very, very depressed again. Well, he's watching from a distance, and around him, there's a soldier harassing another woman. And so, in his desperation, knowing that he can no longer give this great pearl to the Messiah, he takes it out of his purse, and once again bribes the soldier to let this woman alone, and gives him the pearl of great price. No gifts, depressed, weak, and near death, he and his companion now leave Jerusalem to go back to the colony. They're not far out of town when our dying, weakened Magi falls off his donkey. And they prop him, the fur of it props him up and everything. He asks for water. They have no water. And then whether it's in his delirium or whether it's a great spiritual event that takes place, you have to figure out. But at this time, Jesus appears to him in person. And he recognizes him. And the Magi kind of perks up a little bit. He's so happy to see him, but he confesses to Jesus, I have no gifts to give you. I have already given my gifts away. And Jesus says to him, you have already given me your gifts. And the Magi, of course, wonders, how can this be? And Jesus says to him, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When sick, you tended to me. When homeless, you gave me a home. And the Magi still doesn't understand. When did I do that, Jesus? And of course, you know the scripture well enough. Jesus said, whenever you did these things to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did it unto me. The Magi then knows and understands that Jesus has accepted his gifts, and he dies.